third grade.
Hi,
And
Matt. Nice to meet you.
You too. I taught fourth grade for 15 years.
Okay.
A couple years overlapping with Kim, I think.
Yep, a few years with you.
And so Kim, you're a fourth grade teacher?
And then my daughter's in third grade at a different school. That's Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
Got our first third grader here.
Nice.
You can say hi.
I hope Samantha's going to be helping with sound effects.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right. She can do the sound effects.
Can you tell us what the third book is about?
Sure. It's called Minch's Night on Ellis Island. And it's about a terrier whose family moves from Lebanon to America and who stows away on a ship to go find them. And ends up on Ellis Island and helping someone there. So that's kind of the common theme in all of our books, is the relationship between the dog and their person. And they do.
We have 52. They're joining in. That's great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Can see some Q&A popping up already.
I see that already.
That's great. Love interaction. Oh, and I realized everyone can see my wolf in the corner back there. I didn't realize that. My little pewter wolf.
Oh, yes.
I should bring her forward at some time. My first books were wolves. So,
well, we're excited. I didn't realize that Shang was also from China.
yes.
And that Bobo is the mutt dog. So anyway, I think it'll be really special for the kids, as especially those in fourth grade who have studied all about the California history.
Right. So they've been studying the gold rush, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're actually working on that right now. So this is very timely. Very timely.
I remember studying the gold rush. I think it was fourth grade when I was in school, probably. Yeah. So it's kind of rainy outside my window. Where are you all? You're in San Jose area, or?
Basically, yeah. Right next
I'm up in Berkeley.
Saratoga, Los Gatos.
Yeah. Kim and I are in Los Gatos. Dorothy, where are you? In Berkeley?
I'm in Berkeley.
Okay.
And then my co-author, Pam, who couldn't be here today, lives in Walnut Creek.
Okay. Great.
So.
Matt, are you deleting people
I
already?
am, yeah. Everybody's like, I can't see myself. How come I can't see myself?
Oh,
I should. My first presentation, and I think it was Zoom, but it wasn't a webinar. Anyway, there was somebody. I got this thing saying that somebody wanted to present, and I'm like, yeah, no. I think the kids are like also like smart and resilient for figuring out how to do the online learning.
Yes, they are.
Very
They
nice.
figured out within their first Google Meet or Hangout, oh, I can pin somebody. And they're the ones who are, they're not afraid to push buttons, literally.
Right, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's great they can do that.
So that means kids who are in right now are listening to us talk, but they can't see themselves, and they're trying to figure out what's going on.
That makes sense. Yeah, that happened in my last meeting too, because everyone's used to being able to see themselves.
So this is a good time for me to, as they scroll in, hi everybody. We'll give a couple more minutes as you all come in. If you could just, in the Q&A, just give me a thumbs up or say that you can see 4 people right now. And that would be our author, Dorothy Hearst, Mrs. Hubner, and Mr. Weber. We're the panelists. You can't see yourself because this is called a webinar. So you can get, okay, good. Michaela sees 4 people. Excellent. All right, I'm going to make this announcement a couple of times and then we'll get started. We've got about 97 people on so far. The Q&A, once I finish the introduction, I'd like you guys to take a break from the keyboard and just have your listening ears on. And then the Q&A is really meant for focused questions for our author, Dorothy Hearst. Okay, and you can ask about the book, the characters, you can ask about the craft of writing, but we're gonna not do any chat like the highs, exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. So You guys have learned how to do this plenty of times now. It is not a chat, it's a Q&A. So Argonaut kids, I'm going to ask you guys to be as professional as you can be. And we'll get started after I think we're going to have about 120, maybe more. So again, everybody, you're not going to have gallery view. Once Dorothy begins, she's going to have the full screen. And our panelists, the teachers, are going to be allowed to find some questions. They might make a note of it and say, oh, Yuna had a great question. Let's read her question. Okay, thank you, Brian, for the okay. So good to see everybody. I know you can't see yourselves or each other like in gallery view. It's about 10:03 and I'll get started in about 1 minute. All right, thanks, Ria. All right, people are saying posting. I'm sorry, I forgot to put it on my Google Classroom, but it is in the e-news. The link is in the e-news, Mrs. Hoger. Avni, we cannot see you, but the focus is going to be on the author. All right, we're approaching 10:04. All right, everybody. I know I'm repeating myself. It's Miss Van Putten. This is the Argonaut Reads Author Series live webinar. Welcome. It's May 14th, Thursday, 2020. We're so excited to host Dorothy Hearst, and she's going to be reading from Bobo's Cave of Gold. Because this is a Zoom webinar, different from our Zoom meetings and assemblies, you won't be able to see each other or even yourselves. We're going to be focusing on listening to the author, and the Q&A is meant to be specifically questions for the author and her characters, her ideas, her craft of writing, and the illustrations, not for our regular chats. All right? So I am going to hand it off to Dorothy Hearst, and I know we can't see you guys giving an American Sign Language applause, but go ahead and do it because, woo! All right, Dorothy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank all of you for inviting me in. And my name is Dorothy, and I wrote a book with one of my best friends, whose name is Pam, and she couldn't be here today, but we both really love dogs, and we both really love history. And so we decided to write some books about dogs in history and about things that happened in history, but told from the point of view of the dogs who were there. And the series is called At the Heels of History. And this is the first one. It's called Filigree's Midnight Ride. And it's about a little dog who stows away with Paul Revere on his famous ride. And then this is the second one, which I'm going to read from you today. It's called Bobo's Cave of Gold. And I'm going to do a reading from that. And then if we have time, I'm going to show you how you can write a story with your friends, and we'll do an activity around that. So Bobo's Cave of Gold is set during the California Gold Rush. And that the Gold Rush started, some of you know this because I know you're studying it in 4th grade. It was started in 1848. And people came from all over the world to look for gold. One really interesting thing about it, which we found out when we started doing this book, was that most people didn't make money or find gold. They didn't find enough to get rich, and they didn't find enough even to live on sometimes. And so the people who made money were the people who were selling things to the people looking for gold. And the people looking for gold were called prospectors. And they needed shovels, and they needed pans, and they needed food, and they needed clothes. So the people who made money during the gold rush were the people who sold them things like that. So Bobo's Cave of Gold is about a dog who's all by herself in the foothills of California until she meets a boy named Shang. And Shang was also felt all alone because he and his father and uncle had come from California from China, and there weren't any other kids around. So a lot of people came from all over the world to the gold rush, including from China. And Shang's family, like a lot of people, was having a really hard time finding enough gold. And it was even harder for him because they had to pay a special tax called the foreign miners tax. And that was a tax that pretty much only Chinese prospectors had to pay, which was really, really unfair and really, really unjust. And that's the situation they found themselves in. And so this story is what happens when Bobo and Shang suddenly have to find a lot of gold or a lot of money really, really quickly. And it's because of something that Bobo did. And so they go looking for a legendary treasure, and they meet bears and they meet rattlesnakes, and they have to cross a dangerous river, and they have a treasure map, and they have all sorts of adventures. So I'm going to read to you from chapter 2, and I'm going to ask for your help. And if I were there with all of you, I could hear you, but I'd like your help with sound effects anyway. So there are 3 sound effects that I'm going to have in the book, and I think we're going to practice now. So what's going to happen is I'm going to hold up a sign with a sound effect, and you can all make that sound. And then when I put it down, stop. So then I can keep reading. So we're going to practice the 3 sound effects. The first one is a squawk, like a bird makes. Ready? Squawk, squawk. Squawk. Okay. You ready for the second one? The second one, you know how sometimes you accidentally step on your dog's paw and it yelps? I'm gonna do a yelp. Yelp, 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 yelp. Good, that's the yelp. And the last one you all know, because we hear our dogs doing this all the time, including when we're in Google Classroom trying to go to school. We have the dog bark. Bark, bark. Woof, 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 woof. Excellent. Okay, so I will hold these up when I'm reading. And I'm going to be reading, first I want to show you what Bobo looks like. So you can know, there's Bobo. And she's a scruffy little dog. So what happened right before this scene is that Bobo, whose name at the beginning of the book is Sage, she was kicked out of her pack because she wouldn't steal food from a hungry old man. And her pack leader said she was too weak and soft and made her leave. So she's been very sad and lonely until one day something happens. Sage lifted her head and then set it down. She was curled up in a little hollow on the hillside. She was hungry, but she didn't feel like looking for food. Since she'd been sent away from her pack, the moon had shrunk from a full circle to a sliver, then grown full again. She'd wandered the hills alone. She'd eaten whatever scraps she could find. Now, she didn't even feel like doing that. Nobody cares if I'm alive, she woofed aloud. Mopey, miserable mutt, someone said from behind her. She heard a squawk and a whistle. Squawk, 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 squawk. Great. Then somebody pulled her tail. She yelped and turned to look. No one was there. She stood and turned the other way. She didn't see anything there either. Hey, Sage barked. Then something poked her on the shoulder. Then it nipped her tail. It jabbed her back left paw. Sage chased her tail around and around until she didn't know which end of her was the back and which was the front. She ran out of the hollow. A bird landed in front of her. It was smaller than a hawk or a vulture, more like the size of a dove, but it had a sleek, dome-shaped head and a short, hooked beak. It was drenched in as many colors as Sage knew there were in the world. She sniffed at it. It bit her nose. Stop that, Sage yelped. Yelp, 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 yelp. And you can see the bird biting Sage's nose right there. Not until you come with me, the bird said. No, said Sage. Leave me alone. Stubborn, silly, sad-faced dog, the bird trilled. I've been watching you. The strange bird took flight. He flapped his wings around Sage's ears. He beat at her head until she ran down the hill and across the grassy stretch of land. He chased her toward a stream. Sage jumped over some rocks and splashed on her belly into the water. Stubborn, silly, soggy dog, the bird whistled. We're here, look. There was a boy standing in the stream near a big buckeye tree. He wore loose trousers, a loose shirt, and a straw hat with a curved brim. A rope of hair trailed down his back. He was trying to move a big rock from the bottom of the stream with a shovel. You can see it, there it is right there. He frowned with concentration. His shoulders were bent. It looked like he was carrying a large, invisible weight on his back. He moved awkwardly, like a half-grown puppy. He's big for his age, the bird said. His father and uncle need him to help as much as he can. But he's only a chick, the only one for miles and miles around. I've flown as far as I can to look for another one. His name is Shang, and he's 10 years old. He comes from a place far away called China. He flew to the boy named Shang and landed on his hat. The boy didn't look up. Stop that, Choi Hung, Shang said to the bird. There could be gold under this rock. I just have to get to it. We have to get as much as we can. Brought a dog, Choi Hung said to Shang in human words. Brought a dog? Sage had never heard an animal speak like humans spoke. Shang looked and saw Sage flopped there in the water. He put his shovel down on the bank of the stream. Sage got to her paws. Sage and the boy watched each other for a moment. Then, very slowly, Shang raised his hand. Sage tensed her legs. Was he going to throw something at her to make her leave? Choi Hung flew back to her. He poked Sage on the head. Don't keep doing that, she barked. Woof, 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 woof. Cowardly, cowering, craven dog, Choi Hung responded. You need a friend. He needs a friend. All he thinks about is trying to find enough gold. Go. Sage took a step toward the boy. He held out his hand like a paw. She took another step and another. Let's see. When they were close enough to touch, she sniffed his hand. Then she licked it. He tasted like stream water. Hello, girl, he said. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken kindly to Sage. She wagged her tail. She looked down at the rock in the stream bed. Shang needed help. She pushed at the rock with her front paws. Shang grinned. He picked up his shovel and slid it under the rock. Together, they worked it loose. Shang turned the rock over. No gold, he said. His shoulders slumped. He dropped the shovel on the rocks. But thank you for helping. He ruffled Sage's ears. You know, most of my family is gone, he said. It's just father and uncle and me. Most of my friends back home are gone too. He wiped his sleeve over his eyes, but he didn't cry. You look like you're all by yourself, he said. Do you feel sad and lonely too? Maybe you could stay with us. You're the color of gold. You could be Bobo, a little treasure. I think you'll bring us luck. Sage almost shook with hope. I'll be tough enough this time, she told herself. I won't be too soft. So that's how Bobo, that's her name now, Sage has become Bobo, and now she finds a family again. And everything is okay, and she's helping them find gold. And then one day she goes to town and she meets a bear. And that's when everything goes wrong. And let me see if I have, here's the bear. When she meets the bear, things do not go well. So my friend Pam and I wrote this book together. And we had both written books by ourselves before, but we hadn't written a book together. And so we do think very, very differently. And there are as many different ways to write a book as there are books. And every writer writes differently. And there's no one right way or no wrong, one wrong or no wrong way. And so when Pam writes, she gets an idea and then she maps out the whole story in an outline. So she'll do a whole outline and then she'll start writing and find out things about the character and all of that. What I do is I get an idea about a character in a situation and then I start writing. And then I'll stop to outline a little bit and then I'll write a little more. And that's what works for me. And so when we decided to write a book together, we had to find a way to do it so that we could do it together, because we can't read each other's minds, even though we're really good friends. And so we developed a method to do this. And we're going to do an activity in a bit that shows that. But I want to show you the first part of what we do is we write down every idea we can think of on a big piece of paper. And it looks something like this. You can see this is kind of, and I'll bring it closer, and you can see there are all these ideas about the book, and then we put numbers by them to see how much we like them. And then sometimes it'll change. So you can see right there, there's a mule. We really thought there was going to be a mule in the book, and there isn't. And we thought Sage was going to be a big dog in the beginning, and she was a little dog. But we found all that out as we went along. So what we did is we put numbers by it, and then we voted with each other as which things we wanted. So we can't do that with a big group. But what we are going to do is we're going to get some ideas from the story. So if your teachers can do it, they can look in the Q&A and get some ideas from you, or you can raise your hand. I'm going to share my screen. In a moment, there we go. So as you probably know from talking to your teachers, every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And stories, when we started, we just do like a really quick draft, and it doesn't have to be good. It's just getting ideas down. And then we polish it and make it better and better and better. But the first thing we do is figure out the basic things about the story. So every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then there's some other basic things that every story has. We want to know who the story is about. We want to know what they want. What's in their way, because if they just want something and they get it, it's not a very good story. So you might have heard your teachers talk about this as the challenge or an obstacle or something that gets in the way of the character getting what they want, because that's what makes the story fun. And then there's the question of what they do about it. And that's what most of the book is about, is what the character is doing to get what they want. And oops, something wants me to check updates. And then what happens in the end. And there are a lot more elements, but those are the ones we're going to start with. So for example, if we're talking about who our story was about, and now if we were there with you, we'd be having you raise your hands and taking questions, but we'll see what we can do this time. So our story, for example, this story is about a dog who's by herself in the California foothills during the gold rush. So our story might be about a flying teacup. And are we able to get any suggestions from our listeners, our viewers? Okay, so I can't see the chat when I'm here. I'm wondering if any of our teachers can see anything. Here we go. Whoops. Oops, and my screen share went away. I'll bring it right back. Okay, well, I may not be able to hear your questions and answers, so I can just tell you what I would do if I were getting your questions and getting your ideas. So I might say it's a flying teacup, and then Pam might say something like, oh, maybe it's about a bear. Let's see if I can see the Q&A now. Or I might say it's about a lonely cat, or it could be about a mouse. And so then Pam and I would think about that, and we'd go back and forth, and we'd say, well, I like a flying teacup, and maybe Pam likes the bear. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hubner, did you?
I was just, yeah, wasn't able to unmute myself. We have here, let's see, a flying bear, warriors, a person.
Dragon.
What was that?
A dragon.
Okay, so I'm going to stop just because we don't have a huge amount of time, but we'll get some more suggestions later. So the other thing I want to say, and this is really, 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 really important. There's no such thing as a bad idea. So Pam and I might say, you know what, I don't think it's about a flying teacup. That doesn't really make sense to me. But we'd never say, oh, that's stupid. That's a bad idea. We never ever say that. We can say that idea makes me uncomfortable or it makes me too sad. And then we wouldn't do it, but no such thing ever as a bad idea. And something, you know, you don't use in one book, you'll use in another. So for example, we're probably going to have a mule in one of our books, even though we didn't use it in this one. And I also want to say, if I don't take your suggestion, please don't feel sad or upset, because these are all fantastic ideas. And if I don't end up using yours, I hope you will take it and write a story about it, and maybe send it to your teachers who can send it to me. So I think these are all fantastic. We seem to have a theme of flying. I think I'm going to say it's about maybe a flying bear who is a warrior. And then we could use a couple of those. We might bring the dragon in, the person in later. So once upon a time, there was a flying bear who was a warrior. As you can see, you don't have to type really well to be a writer. So you have a bear who was a warrior. Now, what might that bear want? Any ideas out there? Let's see. The bear might want honey. I can see that one. Like that, the bear might want honey. Any other suggestions of what the bear might want?
A sword.
A sword. Anything else? Maybe the bear wants a friend.
Food.
Food. Bears often want food.
A diamond honey sword.
A diamond honey sword. These are all really good.
To defeat the dragon.
Ooh. Okay, so these are all really fantastic. What I think is really interesting that happened here is like the dragon came back in, and that happens a lot when Pam and I work together, in that we'll get one idea and we won't use it and it'll come back later. So I love all of these so much, I don't know what to do. The diamond honey sword, food, a friend, honey, maybe they'll come back later. I like the idea of bringing in another character. So I think I'm gonna go and say maybe he wants to defeat the dragon. And this is also, you know how I said there are no bad ideas, which I think is true, but sometimes there's something that makes it uncomfortable. So I don't like things that have like swords or weapons or guns or anything like that. So I might say to Pam, you know, that makes me kind of sad. I don't want to use that one. And then she'll say, okay, and we'll do something else. So it's not that it's bad. It's just like maybe it makes me feel kind of sad. So I think we're going to say, once upon a time, there was a bear who was a warrior. And the bear wanted to defeat a dragon. So, what is in the bear's way? Why can't the bear defeat the dragon? Maybe the bear can't fly far enough. Any other thoughts? Maybe he likes dragons. Let's see.
The dragon is too powerful.
The dragon is too powerful, and I see he doesn't know where the dragon is. Oops, no, I can't close this. Okay, these are all great.
His parents won't let him go.
Great. These are all so good, you guys. Okay, these are good. And I want to be attentive to time, so I'll stop with those, but I hope you are all keeping track of your ideas. So once upon a time, there was a dragon, there was a flying bear who was a warrior, and the bear wanted to defeat a dragon. I'm going to say, I think the dragon was too powerful, sets up a nice conflict. Okay, so once upon a time, there was a flying bear who was a warrior, and the bear wanted to defeat a dragon, but the dragon was too powerful. Now, you know what? I really like the idea of honey, so I'm wondering if honey can come back into here. So what might the dragon do about the fact that, I mean, the bear, what might the bear do about the fact that the dragon is too powerful? Let's see. He will train, I see that. Whoops, what's in their way? He might train harder. I think he might make friends with the dragon and give the dragon honey. Any other ideas? Let's see if I can see something. Use honey as a trap. Think of a plan.
Eat some super honey.
Eat some super honey. Distract it with honey.
Get a diamond honey sword.
Get a diamond honey sword. Whoops. Definitely feel like we have some honey coming in here. I think distracting it at honey is really interesting because that's kind of a smart bear, right? And again, if I'm not using your suggestion, please know these are all such good suggestions. It's really, really hard to choose. I'm gonna say, so the bear distracted the dragon with honey. Excellent. And so then what happened in the end? Let's see.
They make friends. Let's see.
They make friends. Maybe they open a honey business, open a honey store. They meet some bees.
Ooh, the bear teaches him to follow the wave of kindness.
That's nice.
I like that.
Yeah, I like so many of these. I think they might, maybe they do both of these. So a lot of times when we can't decide, we'll do a couple things. So maybe they open the honey store and the bear teaches him to follow the wave of kindness. So maybe, this is so cool, you guys. Once upon a time, there was a flying bear who was a warrior, and the bear wanted to defeat a dragon, but the dragon was too powerful. So the bear distracted the dragon with honey. They opened a honey store. And the bear taught, I'm sorry, the dragon. Wait, who taught? The bear teaches the dragon or the dragon teaches the bear? It could go either way. Right now I'm going to say the bear taught the dragon to follow the wave of kindness. But it could go the other way around. They could teach each other, or they could even go on a quest to find that. So that's our story, and I just love it. And then we would start asking some other questions because, as you probably know, there are other things about writing a story. There's why and how, whoops, and how, and who. So why does the bear want to defeat the dragon? How does the bear fly? And who helps them along the way, or who tries to stop them? Who helps the bear or tries to stop the bear? And then we'd add details like sound and smell and color and all those sorts of things. And so then we would start to put it together in a story. And when we start, we always just write really quickly and get our ideas down. And that's just for us to get our ideas. But then before we turn it into our publisher, which is kind of like turning it into your teacher, then we like revise it and we revise it and we write over and over again until we're really, really happy with it. So that's the beginning of how we write a story together. And that would be what we started with. And we might change things and we might add things and take things away. But that's the start of how you can write stories with your friends. So thank you. That was so much fun. And if you have questions, I would love to get them from you, and let me know how our time is going with that. Do we have time for some questions?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, we do. I know some of the students and Mrs. Ropers might have to jump off, but we're
Okay.
recording, so you guys can jump off without any guilt. But we can take a few questions, and the teachers have been pulling some.
Oh, super.
Okay. There's what was your first book is one question.
The first book I wrote ever?
Yeah.
The first book I ever wrote is called Promise of the Wolves, and it's for maybe like teenagers and grown-ups. And some younger kids too, but sad things happen to wolf puppies. So you have to know that happens. And it's that one's told by a wolf who lived 14,000 years ago.
Okay. How did you think of this idea for the book?
So what you'll find if you start doing writing is often you want people to show your stories to, and they can help you make your stories better. And so Pam and I are part of a group that did that for each other. And we were talking one time, and we both really love dogs and we love history. And so we just got this idea that we wanted to write a book about dogs and history. And we also wanted to make, history fun for people. And so then we just thought, hey, I wonder if we can write a book together. And then we wrote a book together.
What do you think is the hardest thing about writing?
I think the hardest thing about writing is believing in yourself enough to do it and knowing that it's okay that it's bad to start with. So for me, because I like everything to be really good, I don't like, anything that's not just right. Sometimes when I read my first drafts, I don't like them, and that's hard for me. So what I had to learn as a writer is like, just keep writing and just keep writing. And don't worry if you don't like what you write the first time.
How old were you when you wrote your first book?
That's a really interesting question. So when I actually knew what the book idea was and I started writing it, I was 32. And when I finished it, I was 40. But then I'd gotten the idea for it 10 years before, but hadn't realized it. So it was really hard for me to write when I started. And I would just write lots of first pages and never do anything with them. And then one day I got the idea for the wolf books, and it turned out that Kala, who's the main character in that, was one of those first pages.
Lots of students are asking, how long does it take you to write a book?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on the book. So the first book Pam and I wrote together, Filigree's Midnight Ride, took us about a year from when we started writing it till we turned it into our publisher. And that counts all the revisions. And then Bobo's Cave of Gold took us, I think, about 6 months. And the third one, a little less time, because once you start doing it more quickly. So my first book took me 6 years. And part of that was learning how to be a writer. And then the second one in the series took me 2 years, and the third one, 1 year. So it really depends. And like sometimes writers will just get like everything will come really quickly and they can write a book in a month. Sometimes it takes 10 years. So it just really depends on the book.
Okay, let's see. How do you do a plot twist? Is some of our older students are asking.
Interesting. So I'll tell you what I do, but Pam would probably have a very different answer because it's different for different people. I was an actor before I was a writer, and so everything I do kind of comes from theater. And so I start with character. And so I put a character in a situation and they start trying to get what they want. And then I add something that either makes it harder, or I ask a question like, well, what if the character wants one thing, but she really wants another and doesn't know it? And that can lead to a plot twist. Or what if a character does something on page 3 that she doesn't think much about, and then on page 200, whatever she did on page 3 comes back into the story. So I kind of think of what I could do to turn the story in a different direction. And I usually do it about something, what the character wants and what they're trying to do.
Okay. What kind of breed is Bobo?
Bobo is a mutt. She's a mixed doggy.
How do you come up with your character names?
So we try a lot of them out. So that's one of those things that we keep trying and we keep trying. Filigree we came up with because, so Paul Revere, in addition to doing his Midnight Ride, was a silversmith. He made silver. and filigree is a kind of very delicate silver work, and filigree is a little dog. And so we liked that name for him. Bobo's name wasn't Bobo in our first draft. Her name was Maymay, which means little sister. And in the end, we actually realized we were using, this is why we had a lot of people read our book, and we realized that we weren't using the dialect Shang would have used. And so to use the right dialect, we didn't, the word for little sister wasn't as much fun. And so we went with Bobo, which meant little treasure. And so we just try names out, and we like, for this series, we like to have them that mean something. So in the third book, Minsha, that means determined. And so that's why we did that. So we try to, for these books, we try to have the name mean something for the dog.
Okay. How did you feel when you finished your first book?
I was so happy and excited, and it felt really good because when I started my first book, I didn't know if I could write a book. I got this idea and I wanted to write it, but I had no idea if I could write a whole book because I'd never done it before. And so when I finished it, it just felt so good because it was just a really big accomplishment for me.
Do you sometimes get ideas from other books?
Always. I mostly get ideas from nonfiction. So I read a lot of books about science and history, and just books about the world, and that's where I get a lot of my ideas. Now, that's one thing I do want to say: read as much as you can if you want to write, because that's how you find your voice and know what you like.
Have you ever written a nonfiction book?
I've written short pieces of nonfiction. So I wrote the opening essay for a book on writing science fiction and fantasy, about how I write science fiction and fantasy. And then I have lots of ideas for nonfiction books that I'm working on.
Okay. What inspires you to begin writing initially?
I've always liked telling stories. I don't remember a time when I wasn't. And so when I was in school, I wrote some stories. And I always liked, I would write plays and do them with my friends. And then I would write stories to show with my friends. And so I've just always liked doing that. I always have stories going on in my head no matter what I'm doing. And so I just started writing some of those stories down.
So you were writing even as a student in elementary school?
I was. The first thing I think I wrote, the first thing that I ever had published as a book was, it was called Katie and Jeff's Adventures. And it was about a 3 foot to 3 inch tall girl and boy who go on an adventure and meet a giant squirrel. I think I was 10. I was 9 or 10 when I wrote that. And my sister illustrated it.
Did your teachers encourage you to write?
They did, and that was so good. And I'm so glad I wrote when I was little, because it taught me that I could write, and I started to find my own voice. And I remember when I would read things, I didn't know at first that I could write things too. I didn't understand that, oh, that's something that I can do. And so when I wrote in school, it made me really happy because I realized, like, oh, the people who write things are just people. They're not any different from me. They're just people who are writing down the stories that are in their head.
Are the characters in your book based on people you know or meet?
Oh, good question. They're not based directly on everyone, but everyone you meet always ends up as part of your characters, because you can only write what you've seen in the world. So there's a little bit of me in every character that I write, and there's also a little bit of everyone that I meet. But there's nobody in any of these dog books that's an actual person that it's based on.
Do you have a dog yourself at home?
I don't right now have a dog, but I am always borrowing other people's dogs. So I love dogs.
And are there books that when you were little you read that you really liked a lot?
There were a lot. So when I was really little, when I first started reading, I really liked The Cat in the Hat and The Ring in the Tub. And I liked that because, like, I was always messy and I could never be neat. And my older sister's like really neat and tidy. And so that always made me happy that there was a book about that. When I was a little older, I read a book called A Pony Called Lightning, which was a really old book even when I was a little girl. And it's about a horse that wanted to race a train. And I don't remember whether the horse won or lost after all these years. And then when I was a little bit older, my favorite book was A Wrinkle in Time, by Madeline L'Engle. And that was one of the books that made me want to be a writer. So I'm like, oh, wow, people can do this. So those were some of my favorites.
Okay. I have one final question. I don't know if it was asked, and that is there a current children's book writer that you really admire as a fellow contemporary?
Oh, there's so many. I really like Annie Barrows. I like her Ivy and Bean books, and then she has a new book about a boy named Iggy, who's always getting into mischief and trouble. I really like Catherine Applegate's books and Kate DiCamillo. Some of my favorites.
They are our favorites as well. And our 4th grade teachers actually just got hot off the presses, Catherine Applegate's new one about the one and only Bob.
I don't have that one yet.
Oh boy.
I'm envious.
Well, I think teacher panelists, if you don't see any other questions, we're going to give our silent applause. Do you see any lingering questions, Mr. Weber?
There's one that I liked. Someone asked, do you work on more than one book at a time? Do you have a lot going on at once?
I do. I didn't used to, but now I do. And then what I'll do is I'll work on a bunch of them at one time, and then one of them will really grab me, and then I'll write that one until I'm done. These were all such good questions, everyone.
One thing that you just hit on for all of us as teachers is that keep writing and have faith and belief in yourself, and it's not going to be perfect the first time or the 17th time, and it might take multiple years. So hopefully all of our kids who are listening in realize that they should keep all their little scraps of ideas and keep all of their files digitally, and one day it may turn into something bigger and longer and powerful. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you. This was so much fun. I'm so glad I got to come talk to you all. I will send the story that we wrote together to one of your teachers so that you can have it. And please, if you have any questions, let your teachers know. They can send them to me. And if you get any story ideas from what we've done today, you can send them to your teachers. And Pam and I would love to see them. So thank you so much. Wait to you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Bye.
Join us in the fall with your 3rd book.
We will. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Weber. Thanks, Mrs. Huber. Bye, kiddos. We're going to have it recorded, and then I'll upload the link so that you can watch again. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We have another author visit next week, Thursday at 1:45, and it is Molly Idle, and she's going to read a picture book called Coral. I'll send the details to your teachers and on e-news pretty soon. Have a good day, everyone. Yuna, you had your hand up. Did you have a question? Hi, Hajin. Oh, Anyasari, you already know who Molly Idle is. You read her book, Pearl. That's awesome. Thank you for the applause, Avni. All right, everyone. I'm going to turn off. Thanks, Mr. Weber, for hanging out.
Sure,
bye, everyone. Matt, I'm trying to figure out how to preserve all the questions in the Q&A.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'll look it up, but I think if at least we have the video and we have as many questions asked and answered.
Yeah, I think most of them, I mean, 90% of the ones